1. My dad used to run an ice rink where we lived. The ice rink had a bar and a pretty big lobby that was really long. Think about 30 feet or 10 meters. I liked to go behind the bar and was allowed to since my dad owned the rink, and I would get lemonade and occasionally get some for my friends too without charging them. One day I was behind the bar just getting some lemonade like I normally did. While my back was turned to the bar, I heard somebody sort of clearing their throat as if to get my attention. I didn't pay any mind to it, assuming they were trying to get the actual bartender, Mary's, attention. After I finished filling up my lemonade, I turned around and saw this lady. She looked unhappy, and I immediately got nervous. I have social anxiety, and I tend to clam up around adults I don't know, especially when I was younger. Then this exchange happened.
Excuse me, but I've been trying to order drinks and you've been ignoring me.
Ma'am, I didn't know you were talking to me. I don't work here. I'm only behind the bar because
I need 2 lemonades, a Sprite, a Budweiser, and a Coors Light.
Ma'am, for the last time, I don't work here. I'm 14. Please go see the actual bartender, Mary, and order your drinks.
Then why are you behind the bar? Are you trying to steal drinks?
No, ma'am, I've been trying to tell you my dad.
Get me whoever's in charge right now. You're behaving absolutely unacceptably and not getting me my drinks.
At this point, I was on the verge of tears. Fortunately, my dad happened to be in his little office near the bar, which was more like a booth, and I could go get him. I told him what happened in a few brief words, and he actually knew who I was talking about. Apparently, he had kicked out the same lady a few weeks before for abusing Mary. My dad stood up and walked over to this woman. He is about 6.5 feet tall and weighs 210 pounds, so he was pretty intimidating. This lady couldn't have been more than 5'2" and maybe 130 pounds. So when my dad walked over to this lady, you could see a little bit of apprehension on her face. She was still trying to maintain her bluster, but I could also tell she didn't want to be anywhere near my dad. Hello, is there a problem?
Yes, are you the manager here? This bartender is absolutely awful and refusing to serve me drinks.
Ma'am, I'm the owner of this building and that is my daughter. She is 14 and is not a bartender. There happened to be a framed newspaper with my dad on the front cover for buying the ice rink right where we were standing, which Karen saw. The color immediately drained out of her face, but for whatever reason, she still tried to throw a fit.
Well, she could still have served me drinks. I didn't know she was 14.
Karen says something really stupid here.
You should give me free skating passes for my trouble.
How Karen didn't know I wasn't a bartender is a mystery to me. I was a little bit tall for my age, around 5'6", but the oldest you could have mistaken me for was maybe 16. I had freaking braces for crying out loud. My dad was getting pretty angry right now, and he was tired of dealing with this lady. Actually, aren't you the lady who got thrown out a few weeks ago for being rude to the actual bartender? Because you have been abusing the staff here. You need to leave now, and you are banned from the building as well.
But I didn't know. You can't ban me. You have no right.
Actually, I do. Now get out before I either have to remove you myself, or leave before I call the police to file a report for harassment. At this point, Karen realized he wasn't actually kidding and thankfully left. My dad made sure I was okay, and I got some more lemonade. Anyways, thanks for listening to my Karen encounter. I hope you like it. 2. This happened about 3 years ago at one of the Floridian mouse-owned restaurants. My then husband and I were enjoying a nice late-night dinner when a woman at one of the tables next to us began angrily speaking with her husband and gesturing at a table nearby. This table had a family with a few young children, one of which had slipped off her flip-flops and was lying down with her feet on the wall. This had apparently deeply offended the woman at the other table. She called the waiter over to complain.
That is not hygienic, and people eat off there.
To which the waiter responded that people don't tend to eat off the walls, but he would personally clean it when they leave. This set her off even more.
I don't want my children to learn bad habits off people like that.
Note that her children were old enough that they would be unlikely to copy the actions of a young child.
I want you to make them stop so we can enjoy our meal.
I can only imagine that this woman's children must be robots, and therefore never get silly when they are tired. The waiter was awesome and held his ground. He refused to bother the other table and suggested that she didn't look at it if it was that bothersome to her. He did not feel that it was appropriate to embarrass the family for something so silly. This caused her to go into a tirade about how her night was ruined and her children would start acting out and blah blah blah. She called the server unprofessional and said he should be fired, as well as many insults that I cannot remember. She then said the magic words, "I want to speak with your manager." He got his manager and stayed away from the kitchen for a while. When he did sneak back over to check on his other tables, I asked him if he was okay and let him know that if his manager needed another point of view, he was welcome to send her to us. Despite the angry woman's best efforts, the server did not get fired. The manager seemed to calm them down, and they left soon after. We ended up talking to the manager and let her know that we were impressed with how calmly the server had handled the situation, and that the angry woman was completely insane. She assured us that her employee was not in trouble and would not be punished for this. When the waiter came back, he gave me an empty plate reward sticker even though I hadn't come close to finishing my meal. Imagine being so sad and controlling that kids' feet on a wall would completely ruin your evening. Walls are cleanable, and disinfectant is a thing that exists. I hope for their sake that her kids are actually robots with no emotional response, so they won't have huge therapy bills when they're older. 3. This was over 20 years ago and still has me over tip when I go to restaurants. In my senior year of high school, I worked for my sister's company. She is 10 years older than me, and she and her husband owned a restaurant equipment service company. My sister was the office manager, and as such dresses in more business attire, and her husband was the lead technician. In my early years, I would help out and stock shelves, order parts, and sometimes help out with labor for large jobs. I was an all-state football lineman, just about 6 feet, and 300-ish pounds with a lot of muscle in that bulk. So she liked that I could help carry the equipment around and help with the installs and etc. But she also liked introducing me as her little brother. During my junior year of high school, I went to night classes at the local CC to get my HVAC license, so that I could help them expand their business to include preventative maintenance contracts rather than just repairing and replacing things that were already broken. By my senior year, I was only in school for about 2 or 3 hours in the morning and working half days for my sister. We sold a lot of PM, preventative maintenance, contracts to a lot of her regular restaurant customers, and it was my job to perform said maintenance, so I was in the restaurants on a monthly basis, and depending on their contract, sometimes twice a month. I got to know the managers and cook staff quite well at a lot of these places, but not the wait staff as much. Also, I might add, our company uniform was very blue-collar. Literally, we wore blue work pants, blue service button-up shirt, or blue tee, and the shirts had the company name clearly printed on them, and I normally have a tool belt on. And I drove a full-size work van decked out with all the company details as well, that is normally parked outside. Nobody in their right mind would assume I was a security or police. I was working at a restaurant that was about 2 miles from Sis's office, and she decided to stop in and see me, as well as talk to the RM about the PM contract and how things were going with it. As a maintenance contractor, I normally knocked on the kitchen door and rarely went through the main restaurant. On this occasion, Sis met me in the parking lot and we went in the back door together and met the RM at the kitchen door. The RM invited Sis and I to go have lunch, and he'd come and chat with us as his office was small, and aside from the desk there was only one other chair. We entered the restaurant from the kitchen area and sat ourselves. I'm a quick eater, and I got paid by the hour. And that didn't include lunch, so as soon as I was done eating I excused myself and let Sis and RM continue their meeting when I went to work in the kitchen. I was about halfway through cleaning the ice machine, trying to get it done between their lunch and dinner rush, as all ice has to be dumped during cleaning, when the Nextel on my hip crackled. Those who may not know about the Nextel, it was a cross between cell phone and walkie-talkie, and could be used either way. Anyhow, I hear the Nextel crackle without the standard etiquette at the time of making it beep first to get someone's attention, prior to just jumping in with talking, and normally missing the first part of what is said. It's Sis yelling to bring out RM to the dining area right away. I hustled towards the RM's office, located off to the side, kinda between the kitchen and the dining room, and got there at just about the time he is rushing out of the office. I can only assume because he heard the commotion in the dining room. He and I come out of the back right after one another to see Karen yelling at Sis while blocking her into the booth.
Server is so dumb she won't get her food. Server should be fired now.
I'm sorry, but like I said, I don't work here, said my sister, while holding out her business card.
Why do you keep saying that? I know you do. Stop lying to me.
Sorry, ladies, can I help? What seems to be the matter, says the manager. I am standing about 3 feet behind and to the left of RM, with a not very good look on my face and my arms crossed. Karen looks directly at me, not RM.
Good. You need to get her out of here, pointing at the server. Get her out of my sight.
I must have changed my expression from angry as she was yelling at my sister to a look of WTF, because she just got more angry and started yelling at me.
Are you stupid too? Just do your damn job and get her out of my sight.
Granted, I was young and didn't have the best grades, so I was a bit sensitive when I was called stupid. So I puffed out my chest and stepped towards Karen and said, "What the fuck did you just say to me?" At this point, RM put his hand up to stop me, and I had only taken one step closer, so he didn't even make contact with me.
Call the cops! Call the cops! Call the cops!
My look went back to that WTF is going on look. The manager gestured to the server with his fingers to his ear like a phone, and she went to the kitchen. "Ma'am, what is going on? Is there anything I can help you with?" She responds to the RM, but she's pointing at my sister.
Leave me alone and let me talk to your manager, and take your attack dog with you.
We all assumed she was referring to me as the attack dog statement. "Hey, John, can you just step back into the kitchen?" I just gave him a look and looked at my sis, who was still stuck in the booth with Crazy Karen standing over her. He followed my gaze and looked back at me. "Okay, just step back a bit and see if I can calm her down." I took a few steps back, leaned on the partition wall between sections of the dining room, and recrossed my arms. I should point out that where we were in the dining room was a back section, but there were 2 ways into this section divided by a small half wall dividing booths with an entry on both sides, so I wasn't blocking any access point to the area. "Ma'am, she is not the store manager, I am. What is the problem here?"
Ugh! Why is everyone lying to me? What are you going to do about this? She says, talking to my sister again.
"Ma'am, would you please take a look at my business card? I do not work here." At this point, Karen smacked my sis's hand, knocking the business card to the floor without reading it.
Then why did I see you coming out of the kitchen and meeting with the other employees? Why did you have them sign paperwork if they're not working for you?
"We do maintenance for the restaurant, and I was asking RM to update his contract."
You're lying. You don't have lunch with the security guard and other employees to clean their bathrooms.
Sis then got that WTF look on her face. RM and I looked at each other with that same look. I guess the only maintenance that people think of at a restaurant is cleaning the bathrooms. "Ma'am, she is a vendor of ours. I am the manager. Can you please stop hovering over her like that?"
Didn't I tell you to leave me alone?
At just about this time, the server came back into the dining room, whispered to RM, not sure what she said, but I assumed that the police were on their way or something to that effect. And just as expected, the sight of the server made Karen go off the deep end, which I didn't realize got any deeper than it already was. Karen turned towards the server and took a step in her direction, and as she did, Sis took the opportunity to get out of the booth and ran towards me. RM stepped between Karen and the rest of us, the server, Sis, and me, and gestured for us to go into the kitchen. Now at this we couldn't hear everything, but periodic yelling from Karen, but it gave us a chance to ask the server what in the world happened. She's a whack job and comes in a lot. She always complains and never leaves a tip. This time she just ordered her normal, and when I asked what that was, she got angry with me. The server went on to say how the lady wouldn't tell her what she wanted, just kept saying her normal food, and then threw the menu at her, got up, and walked over to Sis. A few minutes into the server telling us her story, another server came in laughing, and saying the cops just showed up. About another minute or so later, RM came back and said we would need to talk to the cops. As we went out, it would appear that when we came out, Karen had a few moments with the police officers. Her story got even more crazy than I could imagine. Talking to Police Officer 1, she points towards me.
"That's him. He pulled his gun on me. I want him arrested now."
Police Officer 1 looked at me while Police Officer 2 started walking over to the group of us that came out of the kitchen. Then Officer 1 looked back at Karen and said,
"I thought you said it was a security guard." "Yeah, that one."
The conversation continued, but Officer 1 was taking her outside to talk, and we were occupied with Officer 2. We spent the next few minutes going over what was going on to Officer 2. I admitted to yelling at her and taking a step towards her when she called me stupid, but I was never close to her or even raised a hand towards her. Officer 2 kept asking us about a gun, but we all had the same story and nothing like that happened, and I told them that I was just about to turn 18 and didn't even own any guns, which was true. Officer 2 went outside and Officers 1 and 2 were talking for a bit, while you could see Karen still ranting. After what felt like another 5 or so minutes, we saw Officer 1 turning Karen around and putting handcuffs on her. Then, after they got her in the cop car, Officers 1 and 2 came back in. It would appear she was supposed to be medicated and hasn't taken her medication. Officer 1 asked Sis if she wanted to press charges for slapping her hand, and something else, but I cannot recall what, but she said no. I'm not sure what happened to Karen after that, but I do know that ever since this time, I have always tried to treat servers nicely and tip well. 4. It was the summer of 2010. I was 27. I'm male. And I was gallivanting about the Middle East after doing some volunteer work for a few weeks in a refugee camp in Palestine. I had flown into Jordan initially. I'm Australian, so an 18-hour flight. But I just spent the last few weeks having fun border hopping and exploring the region. I had 4x4'd across Wadi Rum to see Petra, and then hired a Bedouin to take me to the coast where I spent a week scuba diving the Red Sea. After, I caught a ferry to Egypt, where I did the usual time-honored tourist things of ancient ruins, camel riding, buying useless junk, and haggling over everything. Since I was flying out of Amman, I had to take the flight from Cairo to Amman Airport to make my long journey back to the land down under. I was walking from one end of Amman Airport to the other to find my departing flight back home, a flight which didn't leave for 4 hours, when I found a thin Jordanian man running towards me, trying to get my attention. He wasn't dressed in any particular uniform. He looked like any sort of normal Jordanian, perhaps a guide or translator, I thought. He had been shouting at me apparently for the last few minutes from a distance, but I had my headphones in and had screened out the bustle of the busy airport. Mister, I've been looking for you, come quickly," he said with pretty decent English. I was slightly taken aback that he knew who I was, but he grabbed me by the arm and started to lead me somewhere in the airport. "What's wrong? Is it my flight?" I asked, confused. Yes, they're waiting for you," was the reply. Now, this made me even more confused as, again, my flight wasn't for another 4 hours. I queried this, but the man responded with, "Your flight is leaving right now." We were basically jogging now, the man guiding me through the airport crowd, and we had covered a decent amount of ground, but as far as I could tell, going in the wrong direction to my flight. The more I thought about it, this didn't make any sense at all, so I stopped in my tracks. My flight isn't supposed to leave for another 4 hours. Has it been changed? The man also stopped and looked at me confused. "No, it's waiting for you now. Everyone else is aboard." This convinced me. "This can't be my flight. Are you sure you've got the right person?" The man stopped and seemed to size me up as he looked at me. "Of course, you're going to Afghanistan, yes?" So, one thing. I'm actually ex-army, reservist, and was using my old army backpack and boots, which I hung off the back of my backpack when I was wearing non-hiking boots. Say, like when in airports. The thing is, I was pretty dirty, and I had just spent the last few weeks in the desert, and even though I myself was relatively clean, my clothes and backpack were looking pretty well used. Realization hit me. He thinks I'm running late to deploy to a war zone. Oh no, I'm not a soldier. I'm going home to Australia. The man gave me an incredulous look and gestured to my backpack. "You're not Army?" he asked. I shook my head and said ex-Army, just on holiday. He pointed at me. "American?" I shook my head. "No, Australian. Civilian." He and I looked at each other for a moment and both burst out laughing. He explained there was a US Army unit already on the tarmac and waiting for the arrival of one very late member. Upon seeing my appearance, he just assumed this clueless Aussie was his very tardy lost infantryman. Upon realizing I wasn't his missing soldier, he excused himself and rushed off to continue his search. I must admit a small, mischievous part of me wishes I'd said yes, and wandered off to join this unit that was deploying to Afghanistan. My ex-unit was actually deployed in the region at the time, so it might have made a hilarious reunion, albeit a dangerous one. But luckily for me, my sensible part of my brain kicked in and decided that sleeping for 18 hours on my flight back to Oz was a much smarter choice. 5. So this happened in 2015, just a few months after my husband had suddenly passed away. He passed in November of 2014. At the time, I was a bartender and had a small chicken farm, so I worked nights and during the day would tend to my little hobby farm. I say little, I actually had over 50 chickens. At the time, I had my cell phone number since about 2011, so about 4 years before I started receiving these calls. Every time an unfamiliar number would come up in my caller ID, it would be a call from someone who was trying to reach a local legal aid attorney, or court-appointed attorney. I would explain that they had the wrong number and most people would apologize and let it go. Sometimes they would turn around and call right back, and again I would tell them, "I'm sorry, but you have the wrong number. I'm not your attorney." Most of the time I would let it go to voicemail and not bother with it, unless they kept calling, and then I would let them know that they had the wrong number. Again, most people were fine and polite with it. But this one time, Crazy Lady had called several times, leaving a voicemail every time, and each and every voicemail was almost impossible to understand. All I could understand was that she was trying to reach an attorney, and she was becoming increasingly agitated that said attorney was not answering or returning her calls. Eventually, the voicemails became screaming rants with a lot of cursing. Remarkably, I could understand the curse words. Finally, I answered the call. Thinking that I would explain to her that she had the wrong number, and then maybe, just maybe, she would quit calling me every day to leave nasty voicemails. Nope. "This is Big Sally, and I've been calling you for weeks now." Not true. "And you've been ignoring me." "Ma'am, I'm sorry, but you have the wrong number," and I hang up. She called right back. Again, I explained to her that she has the wrong number. And she begins to curse and tell me she knows she has the right answer. Click, I hang up again. And wonder of all wonders, the nut job calls again. "You better not hang up on me again, you bitch. I know you work for the attorney and you're not giving him my messages." "Ma'am, I don't know that attorney and you have the wrong number. Please stop calling me." I hang up again. She calls back again. I didn't realize telling somebody they had the wrong number for the umpteenth time was so complicated to understand. Guess I was wrong. And she calls again. "I have court." I don't remember exactly when it was she said. Anyway, she has court coming up, and if said attorney doesn't show up for court, she's going to tell the judge that the attorney took her money and have the judge call me in court and I am going to jail. Okay, nutjob, whatever. I knew when the number came up in my caller ID that it was a number from the part of the country where the courthouse, etc. were located. So I answered. "May I speak with the attorney?" "Sir, you have the wrong number." "I'm not playing games with you, girl. This is Judge Squat and Poop, and I better get the attorney there within a few hours." It was late morning, and the lawyer needed to be there after lunch. "Your Honor, I have repeatedly told this lady she has the wrong number. I am not an attorney. I am, in fact, a bartender at the local honky-tonk. And I am a hobby chicken farmer. I am not an attorney." Please understand, during this there are several roosters in my yard, ducks and guinea fowl. The roosters are having a crowing contest, and all the animals are pretty rowdy. It is spring after all. So I continue to explain to the judge that I am not a lawyer, and am up to my elbows in chicken shit cleaning out the coop, which we had been using in deep bed method since the winter, and since it was getting warmer, didn't need to keep that much bedding. And well, it stunk. For the record, every time she called and answered, you could either hear chickens in the background or extremely loud music from the bar where I worked. I continued to explain to him that I am sure that I stink pretty bad, and that I didn't know anything about being a lawyer, but I had pretty good knowledge of raising chicken and making drinks. I continued to tell him that I could probably make it there after lunch, but that I really needed to finish cleaning out my coops, and would then need to take a shower and get dressed. But if he really needed me to come be a lawyer, I would certainly try. I remember telling him I guess I could be a lawyer if I tried, and that I had done pretty good helping my attorney during my divorce a few years before. I did not even give him time to respond until I said what I had to say. I don't think that will be necessary, ma'am. I apologize for wasting your time. Do you think you could tell this lady to stop calling me several times a day, because I am tired of being yelled at and cursed at for not being her attorney? I explained to him she had threatened me, harassed me, and that I was really tired of it. He assured me he would take care of it. Never heard from Crazy Lady again, and would have completely forgotten this, until I had a voicemail from someone looking for an attorney. I did later find out from an acquaintance that is an attorney that I do indeed have the number that previously belonged to a legal aid defense attorney. She figured it out when she was programming my number in her phone, for totally unrelated business. Hey everybody, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to Idiots in the Wild, number 26. And thank you very much to everybody who allowed me to use and sent in stories for use in this video. If you yourself have a story you'd like to send in, then please do send it along to kingofthecities@gmail.com. And also, big thanks to everybody who's kept me company in the streaming chat. I was streaming these past 3 videos as I recorded them. You do make the recording process a lot more fun. Not that I don't enjoy it, but every now and again it does help to have a little bit of company. It's also helpful when you make mistakes and people are able to point them out so you can catch them before you publish the video, which is good. Right, I think with that, I'm going to head off for now. So until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourselves.